Joining the stage right now, two incredible speakers, one of which you have already heard from earlier today as she facilitated an incredible conversation between Canopy Growth and Warner Brands. So welcome back to the stage, reporter at The Insider, Yeji Jesse Lee, and joining her will be Michael Cammarata, president of Neptune Wellness. Let's give them a round of applause as they make their way to the stage.
Hi, everyone. I would like to introduce to the stage Michael Cammarata of Neptune Wellness. Hey, Michael, thanks for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so just to get started here, Michael, I feel like it might be best to start with your background. You come from sort of an interesting background, and we're just talking backstage about how you went from deodorant to cannabis and not the usual way. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my last brand was a natural deodorant company, and we ended up growing very substantially and then selling to Unilever. And developing the health and wellness division at Unilever, we ended up finding out that cannabinoids actually can make plant-based deodorant last for up to 48 hours. And the biggest profit center for some of the biggest consumer packaged good companies is deodorant in North America. So that's what got me into the cannabis industry, and specifically Neptune, because it's right next to one of the largest personal care manufacturers in North America. And it's a highly profitable margin. So that's how I entered the cannabis industry and started transforming Neptune and launching our brands in Canada, and then ultimately with the goal of providing CPG brands certain cannabinoids for their core products.
Was there any hesitation at all when you went from, cannabis-based deodorants to jumping straight into the cannabis industry? And, were there people around you who were like, Michael, what are you doing?
There was a lot, because we knew from research that the cannabis industry was going to go through a turmoil similar to like the dot-com boom and bust, and there was going to be a lot of pressure on the markets. We didn't know how fast it was going to be, and then the regulatory climate was changing, and we couldn't get a read on when legalization would be there, because to even use cannabinoids in traditional products, you have to have the supply chain be able to cross states in the US. And so we knew there was going to be turbulence. And so the hardest thing was, how do we diversify Neptune's portfolio coming forward with all these different changes that we're undergoing in such a rapid time? We thought we had about 3 to 4 years of change to bring Neptune from a B2B extractor to a CPG company, but it ended up turning out that we only had a whole 6 months to 7 months to make that transition. So it's definitely something that people it was really a pressure, but we have a great team. We're able to launch the last 4 quarters since we made the switch. We've grown our top line, we've gotten a positive gross profit margin, and we reduced our costs. So we have been using this time with all the changing going on in the industry in North America to be able to actually progress faster. And that's something that we were fortunate to have Morgan Stanley as a partner with some of our acquisitions. We also have been very fortunate to deal with Unilever and work with them on some of our transactions, and then IFF and DuPont, who's one of the largest ingredient providers in the world, and then Dr. Jane Goodall. So we kind of brought a little army that entered into the cannabis industry with a real focus on how do we launch brands that are closer to the consumer.
I mean, we were just talking about this, but Neptune 2 years ago and Neptune today are just really, really different structurally. What their strategy is, what you guys are doing. Can you talk a little bit about that change and, why you decided you wanted to go into that CPG direction?
Yeah, so Neptune was originally, it's a 22-year-old company. It started out in curl oil doing extraction. Then it made the transition to extract for B2B, like Telray, Canopy, and others. And then it made that transition to, when I joined, to focus on launching our own brands. So the transition was really to get closer to the consumer. And we launched a brand called Mood Ring, and we launched a brand called Pan Hash. And those are our core brands. We launched vapes, flowers. So it allowed us to actually get closer to the consumer, to actually move up the value chain. So for instance, we're collecting from Fortune 500 retailers in the US, and we're collecting from the government and provinces and licensed stores in Canada instead of being behind doing extraction for other people in cannabis.
And what's What's your plan moving forward for Neptune? I feel like we've talked a lot about how you guys have gotten from A to B, but what's your plan for a year from now or 5 years from now?
Yeah, our focus is like, obviously we've announced in the September quarter that we're going to be breaking even in Canada on cannabis. We're going to be focusing on obviously continuing to grow our top line, our margins, and our EBITDA in the short term. But our focus is really key in how do we win with innovations. So we're very close and we're working on technology for rapid on and rapid off, which will bring more people, we believe, into the edible category. We've been very unique in our cultivation selection in Canada and our flowers, and we're carrying that into the vape collection. So when you look at our cannabis business, which we expect it to continue to grow as part of our revenue, it's around 15 to 25% of our revenue now, and our nutraceutical division and our food and beverage make up the rest. But we want to grow our cannabis revenues, our top line and our EBITDA side of it, at the same time through innovation. And I think that that's something that's very unique, especially with our patented extractor that allows us to do volumes. So we obviously want to focus on continuing to launch new SKUs in key areas, potentially some more strategic brands, some acquisitions, and to continue to support the hyper growth both on the cannabis brands, but also on our food and beverage brands.
You mentioned acquisitions there, which I feel like is always something I'm really interested in as a journalist covering this space. What sorts of companies are you looking at, or what characteristics do they need to have in order for you to take a serious look at them?
We're looking for categories that are changing to plant-based ingredients, or could benefit from certain ingredients that are transformative. And we are very diverse. Like we have Sprouts Organic, which is growing really big right now, that we did with Morgan Stanley. We have other personal care brands, like we launched a plant-based omega-3, 6, and 9, so vitamin nutraceuticals. So we're looking in certain categories that we see that the consumer is changing the patterns, and that the strategics are looking for potential acquisitions, or that they are looking to disrupt and bring globally. So we try and partner with our CPG partners to be able to expand our distribution globally, but there is a transformation. Like what we think that's so unique about cannabis or the cannabis industry, it's like the electric car battery for the consumer packaged good industry. It is transforming personal care products, beauty products, cleaning products. Like people don't think about the antifungal and antibacterial properties and how they're changing your household cleaning products. But that is a huge thing that's happening right now. They don't think about a toothpaste that can fight gingivitis. Those things are happening. Or a plant-based deodorant that removes the need for having aluminum, where people are essentially right now blocking the exhaust pipe of their body with aluminum. So there is such a huge category beyond adult consumption and medical uses that are changing the everyday products that people consume. So we're looking strategically now. We understand the regulatory climate in the US is hard based on the state, the rules and stuff when it comes to hemp and different cannabinoids, but we're looking forward. What could we benefit when those rules change, and how do we get strategic footing in there?
All right. I don't think it's a secret that a lot of industries have been challenged over the past few years. COVID, plus a lot of other factors, right? What are some challenges that you feel like have really faced the cannabis industry and also Neptune? And can you talk a little bit about how you sort of dealt with those things?
Yeah, so it kind of reminds me when I started my first business. Like I started when I was 11 years old and made a couple $1 million at 13 in the tech area in web hosting and advertising. And then it went from the tech boom and the tech, crash. It's kind of that same cycle's happening right now in the cannabis, where you had a huge move in with regulatory uncertainty changing every day. And we're starting to see more clarity. We're starting to see that there is bills that have a little bit more life. Some will survive, some won't. So I think over the coming years, as we see the regulatory clear up, it's going to be a very good thing. As other uses of cannabis and studies are happening, showing that, hey, look how it affects a deodorant, look how it affects these, and these are huge categories. Also, the medical uses, and as the research is coming out to support it, and the government is changing, I think that that'll start bringing it. There's definitely been challenges. Like I've invested over $2 million in a lot of these companies, including Neptune, of my own money, and continue to invest in the cannabis industry because I am really a big believer that it is in the forefront. Just like the electric car battery was for the car industry. Like everybody was like, no one's going to drive an electric car. Now every single car company is going to have an electric car battery. I think that plant is going to change the way medicine is done. I think the plant is going to change the way people perceive personal care products and their health experience, because consumers have woken up over COVID and they are going to change their buying patterns to things that are better for them. And we know 50% of diagnoses come from what you put in, on, and around your body. And people are now more focused than ever on what they're doing, products they're using, how they're taking care of their health. And so I think that catalyst, with government moving a little bit faster and getting hopefully more clarity, and the research to support that, is definitely going to be a huge catalyst. So like, yes, I'm heavily invested across the cannabis industry and continue to believe into it personally and on an economic level, because I've been there in a dot-com boom and bust, and that's what launched my career, being in times of change and disruption. And so this is really exciting for me. I definitely feel the pain like everybody else in the industry, personally, but I do see that this is a moment in time that most people never get. This is an opportunity to disrupt the billion-dollar category to $100 billion category to $1 trillion category. And I definitely believe that. I am now, for the first time, hearing different senators and congressmen that I talk to actually talk about it on both sides of the aisle. And the economics, we need it. Like, for instance, what got us out of the Great Depression was, allowing alcohol sales and taxes. What are we going to do now to help stimulate the economy? We need this tax revenue. We can't keep spending all this money without bringing new revenue streams. And it's proven by states how much revenue they're doing. The federal government needs revenue, and I think that's the pressures with the global situation that we'll actually start seeing more progression into clearer legislation.
You know, Michael, I feel like you have a really good point that a lot of people don't think about cannabis being very relevant in household good or cosmetics. You know, I feel like there are all these smaller categories that people aren't really paying attention to yet. Of those, is there one that you feel like is really going to boom?
The biggest category for cannabis will probably be, like, the biggest profit center will be deodorant.
Really?
The $100 billion company, 50% of the profits come from deodorant in North America on a 48-hour claim. People want to not have aluminum in the deodorants. The only way to get there for 48-hour claim is to use different cannabinoids. It's not even THC and it's not even CBD. It's CBG and CBDA and a combination of the others. But ultimately, I think that's the biggest profit center in the near term in the consumer packaged good, but it's your household cleaning products, getting rid of the toxicity that's in the current ones. It's going to replace a lot of things, toothpaste. And so as that new generations of consumers are happening, that new mother, and I think a lot of people in the cannabis industry don't value that yet, the new mother that's making the household decisions, because that new mother is a huge purchaser. So like a lot of our brands are focused on how do we tell that story, because when you have a kid, you change everything in your life. Every part of your household is changing for the first time. And then that husband or that partner, they are going to live with those choices. Their kid is going to live with those choices until they have their own family. So it's the beginning of a cycle. And I think that as brands are telling their story, they're having their personal causes, like we're planting trees or fighting, like consumers want to be able to vote when they purchase a product. And sometimes that's what they want to help a cause, but they also want to know they're doing good for themselves and they're doing good for their environment, and it's going to be something that gives them a better experience. So I think that the household will forever change, just like the car industry forever changed, or will forever change with electric car batteries, because this plant is so powerful in so many different industries, or so many different segments of the consumer packaged good industry. So it's a really exciting time. It's definitely a changing point, and it does require states and governments to continue to push forward. But I do think with the need for bringing in additional revenues, the science supporting more of these different uses, that I ultimately believe that the biggest category of cannabis, the $1 trillion opportunity, is going to be in the consumer packaged good industry, and it's going to be taking the products that people buy every day, when they go to and use every day, and go to the grocery store, and such as toothpaste, deodorant, soaps. Those are all forever going to change. The household cleaning products will change, and they have global supply chains that are already out there. Unilever has 700 brands. Procter & Gamble has a lot of brands. Ben & Jerry's, when we launched at Schmitz, when we launched our first hemp oil seed deodorant to just try and push it a little bit further, Ben & Jerry's comes out and says they're going to put CBD in ice cream when they can. Like, there is a big demand through brands that are on a personal lifestyle basis, but on the core function uses like what you use. Like think about when you wake up and when you go to bed. Everything you touch, those products from the personal care, they will change.
Let's talk about possible regulatory changes for a second. You know, I feel like you've touched a little bit on that already, Michael. And you know, I know a lot of people hate being asked this question, but you know, what is that going to look like in your opinion? What sort of changes can we expect to see on the federal level in the coming years? Your eyes just went really big. You know, like I with the caveat that nobody has a crystal ball. People hate making predictions, but you know, you're the CEO of a major cannabis company. Would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, I did write an article about that for Entrepreneur Magazine that came out 2 days ago. But there's a couple bills. I do think the best chance right now is a Safe Banking Act. I do think Chuck Schumer has a bill that he just recently delayed that could come out. But I would be, if I was in Congress and the Senate and looking at what my legacy is going to be, I think this is an opportunity to really own the legal decriminalization and legalization of marijuana, because I think it has a social justice cause that's really important. I think it helps level some of the things that a lot of congressmen and senators have been fighting for. And I think this is an opportunity of a lifetime, and I hope that we can move it faster and people can move it faster. I know the industry's pushing, but I do think that there's so many uses that touch so many different people that we should hopefully, you know, can have that change sooner than later. I do think, based on the votes, that it's closer than I've ever seen. And I do think the need to be on the right side of history, and these senators have to really think about it, especially with midterms coming up. So I hope they, you know, can put something through and sooner, and even if it just opens the banking, right? Like that, there's so many big companies in Florida. There's so many big companies out there that are even generating huge profits, but they don't have banking relationships the way they should. And I think as we're moving from illicit market to legal market, and we want to bring in more tax revenue, this is an opportunity that, you know, we don't want to. It would be bad if the bank, if you know, you start seeing crypto banks pop up because you know we moved too slow in the banking situation. And I think that we have a moment in time. I think the consumers want it, the population want it, and the majority of the states have already started moving down that route. So I hope that that happens. Is there a crystal ball in saying that it's going to happen? I don't know. We know we got it. We all spent a lot of money thinking that it was going to be closer than it was last time, and it turned out to be a little bit longer. And so this time around, I think people have paid attention to it, and I think the needs there and the consumer and the voting population is in favor of it. So I'm hoping that, because I've even had chats with pastors that are like, they wish they would move faster because they're talking to 80,000 people in the past in the units that use it, but they're in this awkward situation. So they hope that clarity does come. And for me to have a pastor tell me that they're a big believer in cannabis and it's changed their lives and it's helping people that they need, that's a huge thing. And so I never, when I was in this, never would have thought pastors would be telling me that they hope it moves forward. So I definitely see it affecting different walks of life. I hope it does. There's lots of bills. There's a need, there's timing, and there's urgency. So, you know, it's closer than it's ever been.
Great. Well, last question for you while we have just around 2 minutes left on the clock here. Moving forward, what are the biggest opportunities you think will exist for companies like Neptune, as well as some of the other cannabis companies out there? And on the flip side, what are some of the biggest challenges moving forward as, you know, we go from here to a year from now to 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's going to happen is there's a filtration of cannabis companies happening. I think there'll be collective consolidation of different companies in different areas. There'll be optimization. People are focusing on the bottom line, cost reductions. People are becoming very disciplined. I think that helps the industry. I think the pressure actually has helped companies to perform better on an operational level and to push their teams to do better and bring up it closer to profitability or increased profitability. I think the partnerships, you know, have set in that, hey, let's not try and double resources. If you do this good and we do this good, let's partner and say, let's do this together. And it's similar to the advertising industry when I was, you know, one of the largest providers of inventory with over 150 million uniques and 50 million desktops. Instead of all these ad networks that were competing to this advertiser, we collectively came together and created the IAB. And so I think there'll be more connectivity between the cannabis companies in North America and on a state and federal level. So I think that they're going to come together and become more disciplined, and they've already done that on a lot of different levels. And I think the brands are going to be becoming more exciting, and the innovation is really what's going to grow the categories. Because the core cannabis consumer is moving from the illicit market to the legal market, but the interest in new consumers coming into the category has never been so high. So I expect that onset times, rapid availability, like I think the edible category will grow because people introduce new, like Neptune and others will introduce technology with rapid onset to make the experience safer and more for a new consumer entering the category. So I think more customers will enter the category and give us more opportunity to launch innovations and other companies as well.
All right. Well, I think we are just out of time, but Michael, thank you so much. I found this conversation really interesting, and I hope our audience did too.
Well, thank you so much.